is what we're going to be painting today. I'll be using this notebook only to paint on it. It is a Menora watercolor notebook which I have, but the paper is quite sturdy. So as you can see, the first painting I made is actually with acrylics and not watercolor at all. So we'll get started. So any paper I'm using, this is again notebook A5 size. You can use any size that you want. No problems in that. Okay. Only thing is if you scale up, you make a bigger painting, just need to make your petals and all everything that much bigger in accordance so that, you're just scaling things up. Now, if you're working on a plain sheet of paper, like not a notebook or something, then I'd suggest keeping any kind of board below it so you don't ruin your desk. As you can see, my desk is quite splattered and splotched because of this. This is just literally the back cardboard of one of my earlier watercolor notebooks pads that I had, and I find these are super handy to just keep as a backdrop for painting and resting your stuff on. As you can see, I've already started work on that, but since I'm using a notebook, I will not be requiring it. If you're using a single sheet, then I'd suggest you use any kind of backing to protect your work surface. Apart from this, I am going to be using a palette. I have a separate palette for acrylics because I don't like to my acrylics on ceramics and all doesn't work, and it's a little messier to clean up as compared to watercolor. I know peeling it off like this is always quite satisfactory, but that doesn't always happen. You have to scrape it off and all. But again, the thing is you can paint on top of it also. So I keep a separate palette for my acrylics. Brushes, I will actually be using just one brush. This is a number 3. Actually, hold on. I will switch to a slightly larger brush. Yes, I think this brush should be fine. A number 6 brush. This is one of the Vorison's brushes, which was a multi-purpose brush. I used to use it for watercolor also, but I've realized it works perfectly for acrylics also. And our brush strokes, only apart from the leaves, everything else are really small brush strokes. So one brush should do the trick for everything. In terms of colors, let me just get back here for a second. Now I have used different variations of pink over here. Basically, I've taken one pink color, and by just adding a little bit of white to it, I've got like 3 different shades, and I've used that to make the florals. For the leaves, you could go for a plain normal green if you can, but I wanted a little more muted green. So I took a green and I added a little bit of black to it. So basically, if you want to go along with these colors, you can try other colors also. I've used a pink over here. You can use a red, orange, blue, green, any color that you can think of, you can use. In fact, I was thinking I can make a second one with a different color, at least for the flowers, and see how that goes instead of making the same thing in pink again. Okay, so basically 4 colors, whichever color you use for the flowers, pink, orange, blue, whatever, white, black, and green. These are the colors you'll be using. We'll be just mixing 4 different, just mixing them up in different quantities to get the different shades. That's about it. I'm going to be using a mix of Camel and Brustro water acrylic colors. These are some really, really old colors that I have, which I haven't finished yet. So I'm trying to finish up my Camel colors before I get started on my brand new set of acrylics, Brustro. But yeah, black and white were the first colors to go. So you can see I have replenished my stock. So yeah, white is something that runs out, I think, most of all in acrylics especially. So that's it. And you can keep a tissue handy. I prefer for acrylics to keep a rag. This is my acrylic special rag that I use. I find this more useful as compared to tissue, because with acrylics, tissue sticks to the paint on your brush. That can, it can get stuck in your paint and all. So I prefer using a rag. And as usual, 2 jars of water, especially for acrylics, because they're such a condensed medium. They do murky up and dirty your water very, very fast. So you definitely need 2 jars of water for that, especially if you're using colors like green and pink or something together. It can get brown and murky. So try and keep 2 jars of water. And that's it in terms of whatever you require. We can get started. Okay. I think I will maybe try a slight variation in the color. Maybe I'll just go for an orange or a red instead. Hold on a second. So it's just that, just changing around the colors a little bit. That's all. You can even try a nice orange. You can try, if you want to go for a little muted color palette, you can go for like a yellow ochre or a burnt umber or something like that also. I mean, something like this also. You can use this with the whites and browns, and you can use a little bit of a brown or something in the center. So again, it's completely up to you what color combinations you'd like to use. Let me try. Which color should I use? Yeah, I think I'll try a red over here and see how different it comes from the pink. This is from my set of Brustro. And yeah, we can get started. So no line drawings, nothing over here. I get started by painting the florals first. So this is something which is in common with even my watercolor paintings, where you first decide on where you want to place the main elements. You place those and then you use your leaves and other smaller elements as fillers to move around it. So I'm going to use this sheet of mine over here. Let me just flip this over. It's just more compact this way. Okay, I'm going to take out a little bit of my red over here. It's quite a bright red as compared to the, the pink which I was using. Maybe it's a little more on the warm tones. So I'm just going to rinse my brush out so that my brush is wet. And I have a little bit of water on it. I don't want too much. I'm just going to mix it in over there. And I'm first going to make like 2 or 3 red circle blob thingies, which will just like placement of the flowers. And that also gives you the base layer for the inner circle of your flowers, which, makes it like a deep shadow. So maybe I'll just making very round. You can make a complete round circle if you want, complete round circle, or you can just make something like this with just dashes all around also. So you have a few white highlights in between. Leave ample space in between because you are going to expand and you are going to make it bigger. Okay, so I like to usually keep like 3 main components of my florals. You can actually fill it in completely like that also, at least in the center of it. You can do that if that makes things easier for you. And just on the sides, you can just make a few dashes like this so that will blend in with the petals, the outer petals. Maybe I'll make one here. Okay, just very, very rough. You can see I'm not worried very much about my brush strokes and all. Very rough. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little white to it. Okay, just to lighten the shade a little bit. So we'll be working in 3 color tones. One is this, which is our basic color scheme. Then we'll add some white, like I've added a little white over there and mix it up. So I have like a mid color scheme. And then right at the end, I'll make a lightest shade of thing by adding a little more paint in it, which will make it the highlights. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is with this middle color scheme that I've got, I'm going to make a few these kind of strokes on sides. So this is somewhat similar to what we did in watercolor also, but in watercolor we were blending it. Over here, we're not blending it. Okay, and you can go over those white parts also. Now don't go right in the middle. You want to have a little bit of the dark red showing through. Okay, and then you just make it as big as you want. If you're making rounded flowers, then you can go like that. Or if you want like side petals coming out, then you can make like on the side like this. So it looks like your flowers facing towards you a little bit. Just don't leave any clear white marks showing through. Okay, like a few dots and things over here is fine, like highlights, that's absolutely fine. Just don't leave like very long lines or any like straight lines showing through. Just something like that. Okay, and I'll do this same thing for the other two also. Okay, so remember, just you should have enough white of your the red showing through in the middle. So I'm just making like sort of framing it with the lighter color first. Just these little quick one single strokes. And then what I'm doing is I'm pressing the belly of the brush down a little bit. Can you see that? to get these like petal shapes. And then you keep expanding. And as you're going outside, you make your strokes a little longer. Now I know in this there's quite a lot of white, so I'm just going to kind of fill that up a little bit. And especially for these kind of acrylic paintings, keeping your paint a little rough, a little creamy gives a little bit of extra texture. So I like to keep that also instead of just using a thinned watered down version. We can do the same thing here also, like what we did for this. Add some extra petals on the sides. So this kind of gives the illusion that the the flower is facing slightly upwards and outwards. The brush dried out, which I don't want. Okay, something like that. And now we'll do the same thing over here. I just think I need to mix a little more of my paint for this. Okay. And now when we're making this, just overlap it with this flower. That's absolutely fine. Okay. So it kind of gives like a highlight shadow kind of thing also. So just remember to leave that ample amount of red space in the center. But again, even your red shouldn't be like one continuous line. I think I'll keep this as my largest flower. I'm not going to make these ones bigger than that. Also, there's one sort of hack that you can do when you're painting your color, when you're mixing your colors. Don't mix them up completely. If it has a little bit of red or white streaks in it, that's absolutely fine, because then you get something like this. Can you see this? Where on one side there's a little bit of a red line where the extra red which hadn't mixed in properly has come through. So this also kind of adds a little bit of extra dimension to your flowers. So if you want to just have a little extra bit of texture to it, you can do that also. I think I'll stop over here. There's my flowers going to turn bigger than that one. But otherwise, okay, just a second. I'm just reading a message on the group. Hi, Gulnar. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that I've had a little teeny bit in helping you out. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I hope to see you around a lot more. Okay. Thank you. That just made my day. Thank you so much. So that's it for that. We are going to add a little more white now. Okay. So we'll get the lightest color of our one. Okay. You could go in with a pure white also, but then again, I don't, it looks a little extra stark. But even over here, you see exactly like what I was doing with the red. I'm not mixing my paint up completely to get a very smooth, creamy, one-toned one, which is because I want this little, like how you can see over here, like this has a few like white streaks where my paint hasn't mixed in properly. I want a little more of that also. Okay. So I'm going to concentrate more on the outer edges, the outer petals more. And wherever I've got those little white patches, I'm just going to go over that. So keeping your outer petals lighter and the inner petals darker, that also creates a sense of depth and shadow. You want to go a little bit easy on these petals though. You don't want to add too much of them. Just sort of framing your flowers. And that's about it. Very rough. You can see I'm not, there's no real technique to what I'm doing. Just very simple, rough strokes. And that's what I like about painting in acrylic also. You can go as detailed or as rough as you want also. Okay, and I'm just using the tip of my brush to maybe just come in and just add a few highlights here and there. But the highlights I'm putting on top of the mid pink. I'm not letting the highlights go on top of the dark, the red, the initial red that we had, because I want to preserve that little bit of shadow. Okay, We'll do the same thing here now. Maybe we'll start with this one. Again, just where the pink is, the light pink, I'm just adding a very few. It could, if your page is wet a little, it could mix also, but that's fine. We're making very rough florals. We're not making anything, you don't have to worry too much about it. And again, just making use of that wherever we had these white spaces. Can overlap a little bit also. In fact, if you want to make this more detailed and make a more pink flower out of this, you could actually over here use 3 tones of the same color, right? You can actually break it down into much more different shades and get like a full shaded light and shadow effect also. That's also something you can do. But then I quite like how my florals look this way with these 3 tones. I think a mid-tone light and dark is fine in what I need. So I quite like it. Something like that. And we'll come to this one over here now. Again, I'll keep the whites on the light, the mid-tone pink only. I don't want to compromise the dark, nice red shadow that I've got. And then just start filling in the blanks. Any of those little white spaces that you had left, you can cover the white spaces with your thing. But even when you're making the white spaces, try to make it in slightly like a petal shape or something so that it doesn't look very awkward. You can decide if you want which flower do you want to be on top. If you want this flower to be on top, just literally paint the petal over it, or you can just go from sides and make it look as if that petal, that flower is underneath it, over it. Okay. So I feel acrylics are a pain to get started, as in deciding your colors, mixing, getting a palette out, especially from the time I've got the Brustro pocket set, right? Watercolors have just been so convenient for me about mixing. I don't have to worry about mixing extra paint or it's going to get wasted or anything like that. So that's something that always plays on my mind when I'm working with acrylics because I hate wasting paint. But once I get started, then I find it a lot of fun. Okay, so we've made really, really cute 3 flowers over here, roses, peonies. They all come in the same family of like how they look and in the way the petals go. What we can also do is, since I have so much paint, and as I was saying, I hate to waste paint, I'm going to take a little bit of my red. Let's make some. Now that our main component is done, we can add some fillers. Okay, so maybe I'll make some buds. So sort of the same process. I'm taking first some red. I think I'll make 2 buds here. Very, very rough blobs. You can see I'm just making some blobs, and maybe I'll make over here. I'm not putting them all in the same length. Okay, and maybe I'll just add one here too. Okay, very rough, just some blobs. And then go in for your lighter color and then just draw some lines to kind of give it that sort of eggy shape. So you're sort of framing the dark red, pink that you've put with your light color like that. You can round off the edges if you want also. But for these kind of paintings, I don't mind this. And you can just taper off the end also a little bit like that if you want to. If you wanted a little more structure, then just use your brush and push the belly of the brush down to make like petals. But since this is more of a rose peony-ish kind of flower, I'd want my petals to be a little more rounded if it's a half open one. Hi, Tuba. Okay, so this is like sort of like a semi-open flower. So I can come in with a little bit of white also just to highlight the petals. Okay, that's what I like about acrylics. With just one stroke, you can actually define your petals also, which I really enjoy. We'll do the same thing here. If you want to make it more like a semi-open bud, then just frame it with like one single stroke each. You can take out some petals also if you want to, if you're feeling adventurous. Or you can just frame it like this, like a closed-in bud. And if you want, just add a little bit of the light color white highlights just to kind of define your petals. something like that. And I think I am good to go for my flowers. Okay, I've kept the base over here. I'm not very worried about what the base is like looking like because I'm going to go over that with my greens. It will cover that. Okay, I know I have a lot of that pink and red paint over here still, and I will definitely end up using it. I won't let it go waste. I don't like to see it go waste. So yeah. So what, I don't know if it's best practice or not, but I hate dirtying up so much water. So what I do is any excess paint, I first wipe it off on my rag, and then I rinse my brush out. I feel it helps keeping the water comparatively less murky for longer because you're removing all the excess paint. All that paint is not, you know, going into your bottle or jar. Okay, so now our main elements are done. We've got these cute, rough, abstractish florals. Now we can start with our leaves and greens, which are fillers. Okay, so again, I'm just using my green. This was the Viridian green, I think it was. You can see how bad and old this is with the label peeling off. These are really, really old acrylics. I'm surprised how they've lasted this long for me to rediscover them and work with them again. So there's one thing also that I like to do, especially in these flowers and all. What I do is, if I'm not sure if I'm going to be using this again, I just actually add my green onto my red or pink like that. Okay. And since they're sort of complementary colors, I know if I mix them out, this light pinkish color over here will kind of neutralize my green. So just to give you an idea, this is the kind of bright green that I'm looking at right now. And I don't want such a bright green. I want to neutralize it. So I actually just mix this into my green over here to sort of neutralize it and give it a slightly grayish tone. So this is what I'm looking at now. If you can see, the left one is a much more muted kind of coolish green as compared to the bright green over there. And I think that works better. So again, I'm going to first mix a darker shade, which means I'm just adding more and more green to it. And I'll first make out some nice big leaves to frame the flowers and like any inside ones. And then after that, we'll start adding the smaller elements and then we'll join the, things. You can also actually first start by just making these little stems to join these. So you don't have to worry about overlapping leaves. So I think we can do that. I'm just making really quick, slightly curved lines to kind of make the stems. We will be adding a little more details to the base of the flowers. But since it's acrylics, I'm not worried. That's the best part about acrylics, right? If something goes wrong, you can just go over it. Now, if you want to make it slightly darker, okay, like if you want your base tone to be a little darker, then you can come in with a wee bit of black, like a really tiny bit. Just not too much, just like a really tiny bit. I'm just going to mix it in over there. So I get this nice deep hue of green. Yeah, I think I like that. Okay, you can see that's the kind of nice deep green I'm looking at. And I'll start first framing my leaves in that. Okay, so just pressing my brush down nicely, letting it glide. So you can see my acrylics is very creamy texture also, so it makes it just glide over the paper like that. Just first plan where I want my leaves to go. Very simple strokes, like 2-3 strokes, and it's done, and just bring it to a point. You can see the difference in the two green colors of the stem that we made and this. Okay. And while I'm doing this, I'm just pressing the belly down and doing it. And I try to do it in like 1 or 2 strokes because when you do it in continuous strokes, it has these, especially if you're using like a creamy textured acrylic, it has these slight stroke marks which also kind of go with the whole look and thing of the leaves. So like I just make 1 and 2 like that, something like that. Okay, and we just start filling it in wherever we feel we need to. Okay, just go into the gap over there. And just wherever you feel the need to, just keep going. You can make these like sort of broad half leaves coming out from behind your petals also. Although this I need to kind of be careful with it, so it's not as intuitive or easy flowing as I would like it to be, because I'm having to come to an abrupt end over here. And now you just keep filling in. Okay. You can let your leaves also overlap a bit, like how you can see I've done over here. And I think I'll start adding in some smaller leaves also. Again, not very worried about them thing or not. You don't even have to like join all your leaves together. Okay. If they're close by like this, you don't even have to put like a small stem to like show that, okay, they're joined over here. This is where they're coming out from. I feel this part is looking a little empty. So wherever you feel that you have a little bit of empty, or it's looking a little, just add a couple of extra leaves over there. I'll add some here too. Just keep going wherever you feel. Okay. And if your shades are differing also, it's fine. You don't have to have all your leaves looking the exact same shade of green also. So mine also, my shade is varying as I'm mixing it. A little bit of pink is mixing in, a little bit of white is mixing in, right? So that's fine. I think this part is the most enjoyable for me, just making these simple leaves, just having that brush down and get these smooth strokes. What do you guys think? Okay. I think that looks nice. And now, but I'm not going to leave my leaves like this. Hey, Varsha, no problem. We are recording the session. So hopefully once it's up, you can take a look whenever you're free. Okay. Now I want to add a little more texture to the leaves themselves. I don't want the leaves because compared to the florals, the leaves are looking a little flat. In fact, we are proceeding quite fast today. I think we are almost done anyhow. We just need to add some more detailing to the leaves. Before we do that, we'll just frame the, hey Bijal, thank you. We'll frame our things also, these little ones. You can leave it exactly as it is with just the stem coming in. Okay, I'm just going over the stems because that green is very jarring and bright as compared to the rest. Oh, that's nice, Varsha. Keep going. Just happy that you're here. Just enjoy yourself. Okay. So what you can do is you can just frame it by adding like tiny leaves like that. So you have two options. You can do that or you can leave it exactly as it is. Thanks, Avni. So I think I prefer this one. And you can also turn the edges out slightly, just using the tip of your brush if you want to make it a little fancy. Okay, maybe we can try that here again. Especially for the flowers, the buds which are sort of closed in like these. I think this looks nice. Like that. Hi, Tulip. Thank you. And let's proceed. This I will not add because it's already half open. What you can do is just at the base, add like one or two of these just dashes over there. So it looks like it's coming out from underneath that. Okay. We'll do the same thing here. So this one, I'll kind of keep this sort of closed in. And this, what we did over there, just add some dashes over here, like that. Okay. And now, in certain places, if you feel that there's too much of a gap between your leaves and your, the stems and all, then you can go in and add thin stems to join it together, just to make it look a little more cohesive, something like that. Okay. You don't have to do it everywhere. Like I'll just do it for these. So it looks like these two leaves are coming out from the same stem. And maybe for this too, maybe I'll add a small leaf over here and just join it in. So I said, you don't have to do this. Just a second, guys. I'm just going through the chat files. Pooja, what I'd say is first you look at spaces where you have a lot of empty space. First, try to fill that in. Okay. So like over here, I had that white gap between these, right? So I use the greens to kind of close that gap out. And so the thing to keep in mind is that you want to fill empty space, but not at the cost of making it too cluttered, which is exactly what you mentioned. So first add a bunch of big leaves, but at the same time, leave little gaps in between, right? So a little bit of white space showing through actually helps you highlight it. So try and keep just a few white spaces in between. You don't have to fill it up. I'm not sure if that helps or not, but fill up bigger white spaces and keep smaller white spaces empty. Okay, I'm sorry, someone is showing something. Tulip. That looks nice, tulip, really pretty. You can go with a few bigger leaves if you want to also. I think you could try adding just like in your corners. Maybe you can try adding a few bigger leaves. I think that could really look nice also. Okay, Farheen, looking good. Really like it. Looking really nice. Usha, size of brush. Usha, I am using a number 6 round brush. So any mid-sized brush should be fine for you. For these kind of paintings, I feel any mid-sized round brush should be okay. Okay. Now, one more thing, as I was saying, I'd like to do is add a little bit, same thing like what we did with the flowers. I'm going to add a little bit of teeny weeny bit of white to the green also, and add some texture to the green. Okay. So again, not mixing it in fully, just very roughly, you can see just doing that. So I have kind of like green streaks, and if you want, you can do this over the entire leaf or just on one side, just in one stroke, kind of go over it. So you have this nice little texture. Okay, so I first like to go over just one side of all my leaves. You can leave it exactly as it is also. I kind of like the texture of this, adding this light white to it. Okay. If you want, you can come in and add a little on the side also. It's, I mean, up to you completely how you want to do it. If you like your darker leaves, then you can leave it exactly as it is also. I just like it. I think this kind of adds a little bit of like a light slash shadow kind of thing to it, like a two-toned leaf. So I think added a little bit of dimension, if that is a correct word. Something like that. Okay. Again, if you feel that you've gone overpowered or if you think you've done too much, all you have to do is just come in with a darker green and just go over it slightly. But remember, don't mix your paints too much. You want to have that slight rough texture to it. So if you do this, then you're doing like kind of like a mid-tone, three-toned one, like how three tones you used for the petals. Doing something of that sort. You don't want to cover up that entire dark green that you have. Okay, leave a little bit of it showing through on the sides or something. You don't want to hide that completely. Yeah, I think that looks nice. And yeah, I think we are good to go. We finished up pretty early today. If you want, again, what I like to do is once it's done, take a bit of a step back and kind of see. What also helps is to look at it through your camera. So maybe take a picture of it and look at the picture. That has actually helped me understand where there are extra empty spaces. I know it sounds weird. I don't have any explanation for it, but looking at it in the frame of a picture kind of gives me an idea of gives me a different perspective, because sitting like this and looking at it, sometimes it gets a little difficult to see any flaws or anything, excuse me. But taking a picture of it and looking at the picture definitely helps me kind of understand the composition and see that, okay, is any place looking a little empty, any place needs a little more. So that definitely helps, and I'm hoping that kind of helps with you guys also. So like right now I'm looking at I have Zoom open on my laptop also. So I'm looking at what I can see on the screen on my laptop. So it kind of gives me an idea of, okay, I'm seeing a lot of white space over here. Maybe I need to fill it in, or this part has got too much dark space. How do I fix that? Something like that. So I felt like these two leaves were a little unbalanced on the side over here. So I'm just coming in and adding a little bit of, something like that. So this just helps me figure out if I need to add any more details or not. And I think that's about it. I'm just figuring this out because this leaf looks a little weird. Until now, it was kind of from this flower, it was looking a little weird. So I just extended it over there. So it looks like it's coming out of that bunch and not from this one. And yeah, you can totally go ahead and add more details to this. There is one thing you can do is, if you want to add a little more detail, you can take any, excuse me, yellow color. Like you need a really tiny bit of it. Oopsie. That's what happens when you use old tubes. They either dry out completely or they just spill out. That's a lot of paint. I'll try and shove some back into my tube later. Okay, so I'm just rinsing out my brush, drying it. I made it nice and pointy while rubbing it. Okay, and just taking very, very little. And just in the center, you can add just a few tiny dots of yellow also. You can add a few dots of black if you want also. Try and keep it within the range of that dark red that you had put, the darkest red. Try not to go beyond that. At the same time, you're just making dots. You don't want to cover the red color also. Your red should be able to, you should be able to see that red through these yellow dots also. Something like that. Okay. Oh, you can, in the semi-open flowers also, you can put some. So just in between the petals, you can just add a little bit of yellow like that. Make sure it's between the petals, not coming outside the petals. Yeah. And we are good to go.